Welcome to the WRAL Daily Download. I'm your host, Ali Ingersoll. A rare Camaro, an Escalade. Pricey luxury vehicles stolen from dealership lots in a matter of minutes. My colleague, WRAL Investigative producer Randall Kerr, joins me to talk about this increasing trend. Thanks so much for being here today, Randall. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
So let's start with these operations. What exactly is happening?
I learned a lot over the past few weeks. We had noticed that a couple of local dealerships were hit, and then we found out that another one had happened in Durham. So I just started kind of poking around to see what was going on. And it turns out that, we've heard for years about, some of these certain types of cars that are easy targets just on the street. But this dealership angle was new. And I was like, why are there so many? And then I started looking at FBI data, and the number of cases have doubled in the past 5 years. So you're talking tens of thousands of cars taken off lots. And when that happens, we're not talking about one car, two cars. We're talking multiple cars. And in looking into it, I just found out that these are not, teenagers looking for a joyride. These are really sophisticated operations and how they pull that off.
That's so interesting. And I remember a couple of years ago, we were talking a lot about smash and grabs. Do you remember those?
Yep.
It kind of sounds like that, but on a really big scale.
Oh, yeah. I mean, they are extremely, extremely organized. They know what they want. And, some of the cars you mentioned in the intro there, I mean, those are high-price cars, but a lot of the cars they're really looking for are high-performance cars. So your Dodge Challengers, your Chargers, the Camaro, stuff that has a lot of muscle power, some Dodge trucks, stuff that they're kind of hard to get, and they're really popular in certain populations, and so they target those vehicles and resell them street value for, maybe even half price. But when the cars were free because they were stolen, that's a pretty good profit.
Yeah, definitely. So you talked to a gentleman for this story. So who exactly is Wayne, and how did you meet him?
So Wayne Dubois is the COO and vice president for Sport Durst, the auto dealerships in the Triangle. And they were hit back in March. They have several dealerships, but in this particular case, they had a Mazda dealership, and then across the street where they're now tearing down the building, they had a Dodge Jeep Ram dealership. And obviously some of the cars I mentioned, the Dodges, really popular with these stolen auto rings. And they had surveillance video of, nighttime, a car crashing through their gate at their Mazda location. People get out of their cars. They checked out the Mazda dealership, and they ran across the street because that's really what they wanted, were some of the vehicles across the street. And from the surveillance camera in Mazda, you can see some movement, people running around, and all of a sudden you see, three or four cars pull out and zip out of the location. They found two of them, made an arrest because there was a chase. Two of the vehicles are still missing. They have no clue where they are.
And it kind of goes back to what you said originally, that this is a very well-organized and orchestrated operation, right? You can't it's not like shoplifting where you're like, okay, I'll just put this in my pocket. This is planned, it sounds.
Yeah, Wayne said, and we found other evidence that bears this out, is that, in many cases, probably most of them, these dealerships are highly surveilled by the thieves. They go into the dealerships acting like buyers. Sometimes they send in older people to look like the buyers, and the younger people are pulling these heists. And they'll go test drive vehicles, but the person will have a similar key fob in their pocket, and when the dealer hands them the keys to take this test drive, they'll swap the keys out. And so they'll now have the key to the vehicle that they'll come back and steal that night.
Wow.
So dealerships are having to change how they do that. Their people are keeping hold of their keys. They're not passing them on, which is one of those things. That could possibly hurt sales because a person's not going to feel like they're welcome. So it's impacting their business. They're having to change how they advertise their cars. And this was from Durham police told Wayne that, when they were posting cars on places like Facebook, hey, we got this new hot Dodge Challenger and come see it. That was nothing but an advertisement for these thieves that they knew, well, they've got some in stock, so that's where we need to start checking out.
So you mentioned the FBI data. Does it specifically talk about these kinds of dealership thefts? And what exactly, can you just elaborate a little bit more on the data?
Yeah, they break down regular car thefts and then specifically dealership thefts. And the dealership thefts have they've doubled, I think maybe even tripled over the past 5 years. I mean, it's really significant. I mean, you're talking, from 4,700, I believe, in 2018 to over 10, 12. And then we're talking incidents, not vehicles stolen. So 12,000 incidents of dealers getting hit and multiple cars being taken each time.
Wow. And now, obviously, you mentioned Durham, and this happened there. I think when we think about those 12,000 or whatever incidents, we like to think nationally, but it really is happening right here in our backyard. Can you talk about some of the other local ties?
Yeah, we've covered 3 that have happened in our area just in the past 18 to 24 months. A dealership in Lillington was hit, where several cars were taken. Sometimes they go after classic cars too. There was somewhere just north of here. It was Henderson, I believe. A dealership there took a hit, and that's when we started putting this together. And then when we had this latest incident, we were like, I wonder if there's something here. And so, I do what I do. I start digging around. Found a lot more interesting cases with some local ties, and they're all part of the story.
All right, we'll have more after this break. Welcome back. So in the story, Randall, you talk about Fenton and an incident there. Can you talk about that? What exactly happened, and how did you find out about that?
Yeah, this was actually just one of those, you get lucky sometimes just poking around. Mm-hmm. So, we have a new court system, an electronic court system in North Carolina called eCourts that allows you access from your desktop to look at arrest records, search warrants, and the like. And so I just routinely check search warrants because you never know what you're going to find. And this was one of those instances. I looked it up and it said, had an address for Fenton and Kerr. I was like, well, that's a pretty nice place. Better, probably worth opening. And luckily for me, that was one of those search warrants where they had the search warrant application attached to it. So the law enforcement officer has to spell out, what they're looking for a judge or a magistrate to approve. And it turns out that they, Cary Police and Wake Sheriff had gotten a tip that a car that was part of a car theft ring in Virginia was located at Fenton at the Allison Apartments. And so they showed up, they spotted the car, they got a search warrant for the car's registered owner at the complex. They went to his apartment and they found key fobs, they found printers, 3D printers, stuff to make, a lot of these, when they steal these cars, they need to put fake license plates on them. And they really try to camouflage them so they don't get, caught up and they can sell them and keep their business, their black market business. So they found all of that information. That gentleman was also involved in a chase, and he turned himself in to authorities in Durham. So he's currently, I don't think he's in jail anymore, but his charges are pending.
So this is something that was really just happening in plain sight, sort of, because he parked in a parking lot in a very public area and a very popular area.
Yeah, with a stolen car, but because they put the fake license plates on them, it didn't always pop out. And if they hadn't gotten a tip, this vehicle that was stolen from this dealership in Virginia is in this parking deck, probably never would have found him. But it was a tip from the public that nabbed this one.
Wow, that's really amazing. So obviously these are very nice cars. Everyone would love to have a vehicle like this, I think. The people who steal them, you kind of mentioned this, they're selling them, or in some instances, are they keeping them? What exactly is going on?
Well, I'm sure, if they steal one that they really like, they'll try to hang on to it. But in most cases, we found there was a really large ring that had its epicenter in Charlotte. And when I'm talking a really large ring, 12 to 16 states, dealerships in 12 to 16 states were involved, from all the way up from New York, all the way down to Florida, and even as far away as Arizona. This one ring was connected to dealerships and thefts in all those states. And the federal indictment clearly spells out that the gentleman involved in that case, I believe there were 5 arrested. They were stealing these cars, bringing them back to the Charlotte area and reselling them.
Oh, wow. So you found a lot of that information. There's a big indictment you talked about. Has anyone been charged for these, or what's going on with those cases?
Yeah, so the federal indictment, 5 people were in custody. I want to say 3 or 4 of them have already reached plea agreements, so that ring is busted. It's down. I mentioned, the gentleman in Fenton arrested. The Durham case, there was a chase. I mean, the Durham auto dealership thefts, there was a chase. The car was totaled in the chase, but they did arrest the driver in that. They're still looking for other suspects in that case. So they're still out there.
Yeah. Was there anything else that was really interesting in the indictment?
Just how organized these places are. And obviously police are noticing it, and they're telling dealerships what to look out for. Because, Wayne Dubois certainly mentioned that, their cooperation with police and police telling them, hey, this is how these guys are operating. This is what you need to do. But now, these dealerships are having to, train their employees, like we mentioned, more gates, fix the gates, as in the Durst case, because they crashed through the gate to get into the lot. More security cameras. Insurance rates are going up. Dealerships have their own insurance companies that insure the inventory. Those rates are skyrocketing because of the number of these thefts. That's a lot of money that dealerships are having to spend now to protect their property that people like you and me go out to buy. So there's a trickle-down effect. If the dealership's having to spend more money, what's that going to do to the price of cars? Or is it going to impact how many employees they have? Do they have to have fewer employees because they're having to spend more money on security? So there's an impact to us, not just the dealerships.
Yeah, definitely something you wouldn't think about
No.
when you see a story like this on the news. Well, thank you so much, Randall, for joining me today. I really appreciate it. And thank you for listening to the WRAL Daily Download. If you enjoyed this podcast, you can find more podcasts from WRAL News at WRAL.com. Just search podcast. From sports to true crime, there are plenty of shows to keep you informed and entertained. Thanks for listening.